Welcome back to the channel, guys. On this sunny afternoon, we're going for a POV drive, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the parts shortage for the 2022 plus Subaru WRX, and indirectly the VA 15 through 21 WRX as well. And we're talking about aftermarket parts as well as the OEM parts, because both sides of the game are experiencing a massive shortage. You might ask yourself, why should I listen to this guy about OEM and aftermarket parts? Is he just going to talk about stuff being out of stock? The reality is I work in the aftermarket part industry with the wholesaling side, directly with manufacturers, and I'm actually part of a manufacturer myself, so I know a lot about everything that is going on, and can give you guys some predictions on what's happening as well, because I think that's a big part of it. Let's get straight into it though. So if you do not live under a rock, you will have noticed that if you're trying to modify your WRX, that things have been out of stock for a while now, and they really aren't changing. And ultimately, you're probably getting the answer from your rep or whoever you're working with that things are not changing, or the ETAs are really far out. A great example is on the VA WRX. You'll know if you're looking for a Jesse catted J-pipe, specifically, let's say the Grimspeed one, you'll know that their production haven't been in production in months, and if they are able to source the right materials at the earliest, they're going to be in production maybe in September or October. So for sure, you're going to go the entirety of the summer without a J-pipe. But across the board, there are more shortages and out of stock issues than there have ever been. And you guys ask me, why am I not modifying my 2022 WRX that we're in right now? And the strict answer is every part that I want to put on this car is out of stock right now. And there's nothing that I can do about it. I have the parts on order, and they're just sitting and waiting until the manufacturer has the parts in stock ready to ship. And the reason why is mainly made up of three different pieces. So the first piece is actually what happened during COVID. And you might say, well, that was so long ago, how is that still affecting what's happening now? The reality is we went through a period where parts sold really well at the beginning of COVID. Everyone was getting their stimulus checks, and people were spending money on parts like they've never done before. At that time, I was actually consulting with another parts company, and the business was up like 400%. It was absolutely insane. The spending was wild. But then shortly after that period of very, very high spending, we went through a period of almost nothing, and we're still in that period where we're just starting to get out of it, where the volume of part sales is down, to maybe a quarter, maybe not that far, but probably a minimum of a 50% reduction in part sales across the entire industry for sure. Right after a time, companies were doing the highest number of sales they've ever done and reinvesting into their businesses. Now, as companies do more sales and they make more money, they need to reinvest both in inventory and in product creation, R&D development, the operational side of things. And the harsh reality is, as businesses were going up, the chokehold then became some of the back-end tangibles and intangibles like staff or machinery or things that aren't necessarily goods that are going to be sold to a customer, and they don't get the money back. So where I'm going with all this is a lot of the companies and manufacturers that manufactured parts went from very, very flush with cash, spending it on things that weren't then going to be sold to customers, and then all of a sudden a massive reduction in the total sales that lasted like 18 months to 2 years, and we're just starting to get out of it. So what that's done actually is it's crushed the ability for manufacturers to house goods and keep up high production, because they don't have the money to do so. Their money is tied up in existing inventory, in less commonly sold parts, and they just don't have the money anymore. And the risk of bringing on or making too many parts is so much so that they're willing to do smaller production runs. As somebody that designs and manufactures parts myself, I can say that is true for me as well. Let's get a pull here. Bad shift. Better shift. Whew. Bad second shift. It's funny, I've done like 6 or 7 pulls on this because I'm just got through my break-in period. So we had some weirdness around business, total sales, and all that stuff, and what that really did is it created a dent, let's say, in companies' abilities to stock parts, and it really brought down the size of the production runs. It's much, much harder for a company to make $100,000 worth of parts than it is $30,000 of parts, because they're worried about all that inventory being tied up, and that means maybe they can't do production on another type of part because their inventory is tied up. That's reason one. Reason two is where people are spending right now is very unpredictable. There has been a massive shift, both because of the EPA, how people are tuning, just where people are spending money. There's been a massive just shift in what kind of products people are buying. Now you might ask yourself, why does that matter? Well, when companies manufacture parts, they manufacture lots of them, right? A successful company needs to make many, many, many different parts to be successful, right? That's what they need to do to be able to have a business. But inherently, not all those parts are going to be best sellers, and they're usually spread across a couple industries, or they're tied to a single industry, but they're kind of a spread. And a good example of it is like carbon fiber parts. Pre-COVID and pre the slowdown in purchasing, carbon fiber parts were a pretty hot commodity. Honestly, people were buying hoods, they were buying fenders, they were buying lots of carbon fiber parts, which are very, very expensive, and they're exterior aesthetic mods. The total carbon fiber sales has gone down substantially, and we've seen a larger proportion of performance-based modification or kind of core exterior stuff like wheels, spoiler, the things that make a massive difference, and less of the things that are replacing massive body components or that are making cars a little bit more unique. And we're just seeing a new spread of how money is being spent with aftermarket parts. So what does that mean for the company side? Companies are a little hesitant to overstock inventory right now based on what was happening with overstocking inventory during COVID and lack of sales, but also not knowing whether or not their items are going to sell or whether people are actually going to buy it. And again, this is just companies protecting their risk, right? It's all about risk. And then ultimately, the final thing that's causing all of this is a kind of the reaction to the first two pieces. So because parts have been so scarce for the last 2 years because of the first two items, when parts become available, there's so many people with pre-existing orders or that are basically sitting and watching, waiting for the parts to restock, that when the actual production run comes in, it hits the warehouse, and the wholesalers or the retailers that you purchase through update their inventory, and it shows like in stock. They sell out in like 10 hours. And we've seen this with many, many, many hot item parts, and then the whole process resets. So let's say you're looking for a specific type of J-pipe, or we'll use the J-pipe as an example. You're looking for a specific type of J-pipe. You're told it's going to be 3 months. You wait the 3 months. Theoretically, it's supposed to become available this week, and all of a sudden, it's not available. You call back, and they're like, it's going to be another 3 months. If you didn't have your order in sitting, where the company's basically holding your money for an indefinite amount of time for an order you cannot cancel, if you didn't do that, the likelihood of you getting some of these parts is very low, because there's so many other people that are so desperate to have that part that they're willing to do it. So second gear pull here. Whew. Ooh, I'm going too fast. And that's basically it. So right now, there is a massive shortage in parts. If you're not aware of it, it does exist. This is not clickbait. This is not false news. This is the insanity that we're dealing with. And it is remarkable that, I can tell you from a e-commerce side of things, running a retail site, I would say as much as 30 to 40% of the most commonly purchased parts for the Subaru platforms are out of stock right now, with ETAs upwards of 3 to 4 months, which is normal. That's a normal ETA because that's the production run. But usually it used to be that there were so many production runs caked in that you'd never wait more than 5 or 6 weeks at the highest amount. It just isn't happening anymore. So what I'm going to say is, if you have a part that's in stock and you want it, buy it. It might not be available in the long run there. That's the video. If you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video.